from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 5. Chirani kim patina shanti di shanti bhiksham Naivang gripa parabrita saritopya susyan Rudha guha kim ajito vatino pasanan Kasmat bhajanti kavayo dana durmadandan Chirani, torn clothes. Kim, weather. Pati, on the road. Na, not. Santi, there is. Disanti, give in charity. Bhiksham, alms. Na, not. Eva, also. Angripa, the trees. Parabrita, one who maintains others. Sarita, the rivers. Api, also. Asusyan, have dried up. Rudha, closed. Guha, caves. Kim, weather. Adita, the Almighty Lord. Avati, give protection. Na, not. Upasanan, the surrendered soul. Kasmat, what for then? Bhajanti, flatters. Kavayo, the learned. Dana, wealth. Durma, undone. Too intoxicated by. Translation, are there no torn clothes lying on the common road? Do the trees which exist for maintaining others no longer give alms in charity? Do the rivers being dried up no longer supply water to the thirsty? Are the caves of the mountains now closed? Or above all, does the Almighty Lord not protect the fully surrendered souls? Why then do the learned sages go to flatter those who are intoxicated by hard-earned wealth? Now, Prabhupada gives a very long purport here, nearly 3 pages. So if you just try to follow as best you can. Purport, the renounced order of life is never meant for begging or living at the cost of others as a parasite. According to the dictionary, a parasite is a sycophant who lives at the cost of society without making any contribution to that society. The renounced order is meant for contributing something substantial to society and not depending on the earnings of the householders. On the contrary, acceptance of alms from the householders by the bona fide mendicant is an opportunity afforded by the saint for tangible benefit of the donor. In the Sanatan Dham institution, alms giving to the mendicant is part of a householder's duty, and it is advised in the scriptures that the householders should treat the mendicants as their family children and should provide them with food, clothing, etc. without being asked. Pseudo-mendicants therefore should not take advantage of the charitable disposition of the faithful householders. The first duty of a person in the renounced order of life is to contribute some literary work for the benefit of the human being in order to give him realized direction towards self-realization. Amongst the other duties in the renounced order of life of Srila Sanatan, Srila Rupa and the other Goswamis of Vrindavan, the foremost duty discharged by them was to hold learned discourses amongst themselves at Seva Kunja, Vrindavan, the spot where Sri Radha Damodar Temple was established by Srila Jiva Goswami, and when the actual Samadhi tombs of Sri Rupa Goswami and Srila Jiva Goswami are laid. For the benefit of all in human society, they left behind them immense literatures of transcendental importance. Similarly, all the acharyas who voluntarily accepted the renounced order of life aimed at benefiting human society, not at living a comfortable or irresponsible life at the cost of others. However, those who cannot give any contribution should not go to the householders for food, for such mendicants asking bread from the householders are an insult to the highest order. Sukadeva Goswami gave this warning especially for those mendicants who adopt this line of profession to solve their economic problems. Such mendicants are in abundance in the age of Kali. When a man becomes a mendicant willfully or by circumstances, he must be of firm faith and conviction that the Supreme Lord is the maintainer of all living beings everywhere in the universe. Why then would he neglect the maintenance of a surrendered soul who is 100% engaged in the service of the Lord? Common Master looks to the necessities of his servant, so how much more would the all-powerful, all-opulent Supreme Lord look after the necessities of life for a fully surrendered soul? The general rule is that a mendicant devotee will accept a small loincloth without asking anyone to give it in charity. He simply salvages it from the rejected torn cloth thrown in the street. When he is hungry, he may go to a magnanimous tree which drops fruit. And when he is thirsty, he may drink water from the flowing river. He does not require to live in a comfortable house, but should find a cave in the hills and not be afraid of jungle animals, keeping faith in God, who lives in everyone's heart. The Lord may dictate to tigers and other jungle animals not to disturb his devotee. Haridas Thakur, a great devotee of Lord Sri Chaitanya, used to live in such a cave, and by chance a great venomous snake was a co-partner of the cave. Some admirer of Thakur Haridas, who had to visit the Thakur every day, feared the snake and suggested that the Thakur leave that place. Because his devotees were afraid of the snake and they were regularly visiting the cave, Thakur Haridas agreed to the proposal on their account. But as soon as this was settled, the snake actually crawled out of its hole in the cave and left the cave for good before everyone present. By the dictation of the Lord, who lived also within the heart of the snake gave preference to Haridas and decided to leave the place and not disturb him. So this is a tangible example of how the Lord gives protection to a bona fide devotee like Thakur Haridas. According to the regulations of the Sanatana Dharma institution, one is trained from the beginning to depend fully on the protection of the Lord in all circumstances. The path of renunciation is recommended for acceptance by one who is fully accomplished and fully purified in his existence. This stage is described also in Bhagavad Gita 16.5 as Daivi Sampat. A human being is required to accumulate Daivi Sampat or spiritual assets. Or material assets will overcome him disproportionately, and thus one will be forced into the entanglement of different miseries of material world. Sannyasi should always live alone, without company, and he must be fearless. Should never be afraid of living alone, although he is never alone. The Lord is residing in everyone's heart, and unless one is purified by this prescribed process, one will feel that he is alone. But a man in the renounced order of life must be purified by the process. Thus he will feel the presence of the Lord everywhere and will have nothing to fear, such as being without any company. Everyone can become a fearless and honest person if his very existence is purified by discharging the prescribed duty for each and every order of life. One can become fixed in one's prescribed duty by faithful oral reception of Vedic instructions and assimilation of the essence of the Vedic knowledge by devotional service to the Lord. That's it. I thought there was more. Okay. Chirani kim patina shanti di shanti bhiksham navangripa parvana sariho prasusham ruda guha kim achino bhatino pasana kadmat badanti kavayo dana durbadandan. So the theme of Sukadeva Goswami's statements, continuing detachment from material engagement, but simultaneously attachment to spiritual activity. One cannot have detachment without attachment. So it is a fact that now one of the concomitant factors of the jiva is attachment. The impersonalists might say just be neti, not this, not that, nothing, no attachment. But actually, that is unnatural. because the essence of the being of each living entity is attachment, but the attachment originally is with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and with all the devotees of the Lord. That's the original attachment. That's pure attachment. That's spiritual attachment. Now that attachment, being forgetful of that attachment has come to so many things in the material world. So some obviously see that these attachments are causing a lot of problems. So one becomes entangled. One suffers because of attachment. Some attachments give good results or seemingly good results, but at the next moment they're suffering. So therefore we have to get rid of all attachment. But that is not, as I said, not natural. It's not actually intrinsic to the living entity. Attachment will always be there. One can artificially suppress attachment temporarily, but it will come back up. So if one suppresses it artificially, then and doesn't have anything else, the attachments will come up, as I said. So one has to develop proper attachment, spiritual attachment. I think we read this verse. Attachment is the cause of the bondage, or can be the cause of the liberation. So let us practice the attachment that is good, spiritual attachment, pure attachment to Krishna, to spiritual activities. And then when one is full in that, then very easily one doesn't even look to other attachments. This is the secret of success, actually. Switching. Prabhupada sometimes used to say, instead of I in the center of everything, me in the center of everything, you just replace that with Krishna. Put Krishna, that is natural. Krishna is in the center of everything. So you just take the I and me, and everything is in relation to I and me and so on and so forth. But then you put Krishna, then everything becomes very natural and enlivening. So this theme is very much stressed by Sukadeva Goswami, detachment, and he gives some examples in the previous verse also today. And of course in the sages of the past and the renunciates of the past, these are the usual recommendations. And not only here, we find also in the 7th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, when Narad Muni describes the 4 ashramas and the 4 orders of life. He starts with the sannyasis, he gives direction, how one of the same theme as Sukadeva Goswami, how they should live detached. Are there no torn clothes lying on the common road? In other words, one should not endeavour very hard for the material material things in life. One should not. So this is the stage of renunciation. So torn clothes on the common road. The trees which exist for maintaining others no longer give alms in charity. Rivers supply water. The caves of the mountain residents, so on and so forth. So these are, if one is practicing renunciation, one can take instruction here, because if one goes, all right, so you're renouncing society and you're going out by yourself. All right, what about clothes? Here is the torn clothes. Everywhere there's torn clothes. Also mentioned here is trees. Which exist for maintenance. Prabhupada says that the trees, certain trees give fruits, so on and so forth. Because one has to know, maybe from learning from others, or maybe experience, sometimes bitter experience, which fruits are good, which berries are good, which are not so good. One can learn these things. So if one is living by themselves in the forest, the trees supply, not only trees supply fruits and eatables, but also besides the torn cloth or discarded cloth, I think even today they're still making, the trees can supply cloth, from the bark. This art of cloth making is still going on. I know in Indonesia, I saw some place They go in India. In India, they still make from the bark. I know in Southeast Asia, Africa, they go to certain trees, and they generally go when it's wet, rainy season, and the tree's wet, and then they peel off the outer bark, and then underneath is the inner bark, and so there's an art how to take that bark off. They do it without, because if you take too much, it'll kill the tree. But they know the art of taking the bark off. They take it off. They can take it off in wide sheets, or they can take it off in thin, whatever way they want to do it. But it's wet, so it comes. Otherwise, it's too dry, it breaks. So they leave it till it's wet, and they take it off. I saw them doing this too, and they take it off, and then they roll it out, and then they keep it damp. And they've got these kind of, what I saw anyway, they've got these kind of wooden mallet things, and they just kind of beat it like that, and make it thinner and thinner and thinner. It's a long, arduous task. And I still think that they are doing it. I know in Africa and Indonesia they're doing it, and they can actually, they get it thin enough. Sometimes they make strips, they put it together, and they make real thin strips from the bark, almost like a thread, and they can sew with that bark thread. And they can sew the strips together, so it actually comes out, and they can make all sorts of, not only cloths but all sorts of other things as well. So trees can provide this, can provide not only fruits and edibles, can provide cloth if one wants to. And actually it's mentioned in the Shastras about wearing bark, isn't it? You sometimes read about the renunciates just wearing the bark from the trees. Bark from the trees. So, they hammer it out, Of course, if you just peel the bark and try to wear that, so it's just going to break and look at it. So all that, there's generally people, there's society, there's all sorts of torn cloth all over the place. Just take that and wear that. I mean, here, of course, the rivers being dried up, no longer okay. Rivers. Now, here is also mentioned flowing water. It's not good to take water that is still. You have to learn all these things. Many of the indigenous populations still know these arts. The Aborigines of Australia and so many other groups still know. They still practice these types of. They know about rivers and the flowing water, and they know about different types of trees and what you can eat and what you can't eat, what's under the ground, and so on and so forth. So flowing rivers and caves in the mountain. Now, the example here is given of Haridas Thakur. When Haridas Thakur, the story of how he was living in a cave. Now, when Haridas Thakur came to the Nabadwip area, Marco area, he was chanting. Of course, there was complaint against him, and then he's ordered by the Qazi to be punished and actually killed, and he was beaten to death and dragged through marketplace and beaten. And then when he was thrown in the Ganga, he came up, and it said he came up around the Pulia area, and those who are from Mayapur. And now here it is mentions a cave. Now in other places the description is of a big huge tree, and I believe I haven't been there, but I believe you can still go to this tree. Have you been there? Yeah. So it's near the Pulia. There's a big, huge tree, and it's kind of hollowed out, and it's said to be the cave of. That was actually considered the cave of Haridas Thakur, and so Haridas, big, huge tree, and hollowed out, and he used to live in there. And actually, the snake lived in amongst the roots of the tree. I know I've seen paintings of Haridas living in a more kind of, like what we think of, what we conceive of as a cave in the hills or something. But according to other descriptions, he lived in the hollow of a tree. So this Haridas Thakur lived in the hollow of a tree. And then the snake was there, and then of course, so many people used to come and visit Haridas Thakur to get his darshan, but then they were afraid of this big poisonous snake. It doesn't say which type of poisonous snake, cobra, who knows what it was. But it was living in the roots of the tree, and Haridas Thakur was just living there, not even mindful. Well, maybe he knew it was there, but he wasn't concerned about it. That this poisonous snake was right there, and he was just living there chanting. He was just chanting, living in the hollow. So he didn't even care about the snake. So anyway, that, as Prabhupada tells the story, they came and they were afraid. So then Haridas, now there's one account that's given that actually Haridas Thakur spoke to the snake. Now he said that, you know, there many visit me and they're afraid of you. So because they're afraid, I'm going to leave here. You know, either you leave here because of them, or I'll leave here. And so he said, and actually the account is given that I'm not disturbed by you, but they are afraid. So either I'm going to leave or you. So the snake, and here Prabhupada explains that the Paramatma being in the heart of the snake of course didn't say anything. He just like went. So Haridas Thakur was not disturbed by the snake. I remember Prabhupada one time he gave a lecture at Melbourne Town Hall, and there was a couple of people in the front, and and they were kind of talking loudly and causing a bit of a disturbance, and Prabhupada said, and he kind of stopped and he said, no, don't cause disturbance. And then these kind of like, they were all kind of old hippie type people. Remember that? They were in Town Hall in Melbourne. And then one guy said, well, you're supposed to be the great sage or something, why are you so disturbed? He said, like, Prabhupada answered very wonderfully. He said, well, no, I'm not disturbed. He said, but you're disturbing the others, and they came here to hear the lecture. So I'm not disturbed, but you're disturbing them. And they came here to hear. So Haridas Thakur wasn't disturbed, but anyway, the snake crawled out and left. So now he was living very simply. The description is given that one in the 7th canto also, that Narad Muni goes so far, the renunciates, those who accepted the renounced order of life, they should just go naked. There's one description in this. They should go naked, or if they have to wear something, they should only wear a loincloth. Right? Loincloth. So if you're going out, you just go naked. And of course in the Kumbh Mela and all these, it was just the Ganga Sagar Mela just the other day, another big Mela that they have down there, where the Ganga comes down the Bay of Bengal. They have the Naga Babas come down, they're all naked. And they're there with their big matted locks and sitting there covered in ash, but they're all naked. And so that's just, in India everyone knows these are the Naga Babas, they're all naked. they're like that, and so they're not disturbed by it. You know. But of course in the Western countries, if you were to do like that, so you know, just imagine if, you know, Banamaj or I were in a kirtan party downtown Pitt Street, Sydney, and we were just naked, or we just went with a loincloth, we would be arrested. We wouldn't last very long. So, you know, time, place and circumstance, you know, that was for the ancient times. The sages used to go to the forest. They used to go to the Himalaya, ride up in the Himalaya. I remember one time, decades ago, I went up to Badrik Ashram, and there's a lot of caves up there in the mountains. You can see them. And I was talking to the head priest, and I said, "Oh, there's a lot of caves." And I said, well, you know, I thought I saw, there was a bit of a ditch. I said, I thought I saw people actually, yeah, they live there. People live there. I said, really? They're the yogis. He went like this. There's some of them. And he said, you know, really? Why do you say some? Well, because most of the time they're in here, in the bazaar here. And he said, there's one over there. They're drinking chai. He's drinking chai over there. So it gets to the point, actually, that story gets to the point here where Prabhupada talks about the sycophant, or those who you know, pose themselves as renunciates, but actually they're not really renunciates. Now there are true in every religious order. You know, and different religions also have their mendicants. In Christianity, a mendicant is one who just lives like very renounced and just begs for his alms. They're called friars or something like that. Different religions. Franciscans were supposed to, Carmelites were supposed to be like that. Took the vow of poverty, and they would just live by begging. And so you have it in Christianity. You have it in Islam also, the fakir. especially in the Sunnis, Muslims. The fakir was a holy man who just lived by begging and just was very poor, and so on and so forth. And you have it with the Buddhists also. Little similar name to the Hindu. I hear the word bhiksham. They call their renunciates bhikkhu. I think it was bhikkhu. Bhikkhu. They are just monks, Buddhist monks who just live very austerely, and whatever people give them, that's how they live. So they're Buddhist monks, and also in the Vaishnava we have our sanya bhikshus, bhikkhu, and very renounced. So every order had them, but they were holy men. They would give, they would enlighten people, and so. Coming back to the point of falsely, okay, so this was living like that before. Now, of course, as I said, Kalapatra Desh, time, place, and so, Lord Chaitanya wanted this Sankirtan movement spread all over, and the spirit of Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Bhaktisiddhanta, and Srila Prabhupada spread all over the world. Now, there's one injunction for sannyasis, for example. They shouldn't wear any sewn cloth. Shouldn't wear any sewn cloth. There's one injunction. Sannyasis have to be renounced. Shouldn't wear any sewn cloth. In fact, Lord Chaitanya, he used to just have one piece and just used to wrap it around and bring it up like this, and that was it, one piece, and generally short, above the knee. It's considered, that's another thing, that's another injunction. Be short, that's considered, makes you humble. When it's long, it can be considered flowing, and you might get into the flowing thing. But when it's short, it's bare legs, walking along, and not so attractive. So Lord Chaitanya would wear like that. So not sewn. But so not sewn. And another injunction is the sannyas should just go by walking, with no shoes. Don't wear shoes, and don't cross the ocean. The renunciate says, don't cross over the ocean, shouldn't cross the ocean, should just go by walking, wherever they can get. So Lord Chaitanya, when he went travelling in South India, went to do that too, he was just walking, and with barefoot. Now that's hard. Anyone who's done the parikram in Mayapur, or in Vrindavan, which is even longer still, going barefoot, I didn't think much of it the first time I did it, but when I actually did it, normally you go barefoot every now and again around the place. But when you go barefoot, there's all sorts of stones and little spiky things, and isn't it? It's tough. At the end of the first day, I was like bleeding, and my feet were hurting. I had to get someone to massage and to tape up the blood that was coming out. But wasn't it? It was really austere. So, but I guess over time you would get used to that, and then your feet would harden up, and you could do it. It'd be quite natural. I see the kids, it's quite natural. They just run around barefoot. But as you get up, so all these injunctions are there. But of course, in Kalapatra, according to time plate, now Lord Chaitanya wanted the Sankirtan movement spread everywhere. So therefore, Prabhupada came overseas, and Prabhupada dressed nicely. He had sewn cloth. I remember one time there was someone was walking with Prabhupada, they're barefooted in the middle of winter, barefoot, and Prabhupada turned and said that, I know you are very renounced and everything, and you're walking barefoot, which is very nice, but at the same time we have to look after our health, and at the same time others may think of us in an unfavourable way if they just see us walking barefoot or niggardly dressed. I think he used that word, niggardly dressed. In India and the culture in the past, people could understand these types of things, but in the West they don't. They look down on this type of thing. Niggardly, dirtily dressed, torn clothes. Here it's mentioned torn clothes. Just wear torn clothes. Just walk around in torn clothes. But if we were to present the Krishna consciousness movement, I walk into the university, torn clothes, or just a coping. It's mentioned just come, you just hold a danda and a kamandalu. I went to visit had an appointment with the Prime Minister. You just can't do those types of things. So you have to adjust. So that's the main thing. So Prabhupada actually said like that. And he was concerned, and he wanted people to look after their health. I remember with the Sedacrit in Melbourne, that Prabhupada was giving a lecture, and he stopped his lecture because Sedacrit, now, if the old timers remember, Sedacrit has passed away now, but he was very skinny. Very, very skinny. Although I know he had a lot of prasadam, but he was very skinny. So Prabhupada saw him and he stopped. He said, "Are they feeding you here in the temple?" He was kind of leaning up, and he was like, kind of dozing up a little bit. He was, And Prabhupada stopped, and then he said, "Are they feeding you? Make sure he's eating nice prasad." So Prabhupada, he didn't like to see too skinny, nor did he like to see too fat either. just right. So dressed nicely, and so Prabhupada always wanted to. He always said you should look very nice. I remember in the early days, when we went on Sankirtan, before we went on Harinam or something like that. We used to have temple commanders in those. That's kind of thing of the past now, but we had a temple commander who used to line us all up and inspect us before we went out. And I remember Buddhi Munda was big at this. He'd line us all up, and then the sock was a bit dirty. What's this? He'd even check our fingernails. What's the dirty fingernail? So line us all up, dressed nicely. I think Indra Maharaj still does this with the kirtan party. It's very good. And Prabhupada actually gave instructions for kirtan parties. If you go right back to the San Francisco days, he said you should do dress nicely. The girls and the boys should dress very nicely. Don't go out all looking scruffy on this like that. Because, for ourselves we can do anything. But, because we're trying to spread Krishna consciousness, we have to, people, their condition. They think of things in a certain type of way. So they expect a certain nicely, clean, everything clean, and so on and so forth. So time, place and circumstance, but of course, so one should practice these things. These are mentioned here, but one can't be a sycophant or a parasite. Now sycophant's interesting because they are like flatterers, but insincere flatterers. They're like praising you. Of course, all of us are guilty of this to more or less a degree, I get. We pray because we want something. Oh, you're so nice. Quite often, it's like, oh, I want something. Oh, I love you so much. In the back, we've got the knife too. You're so nice. You're this. You're that. And then, after the person's gone, I hate her. I hate him. I just did it to get that thing. Insincere. Of course, that's the extreme thing. But psychoman's more like. They go there and they flatter, but just to get things. So here Sukadeva Goswami actually says that. Why should the learned sages go to flatter those who are intoxicated by hard-earned wealth? They're intoxicated. When someone's intoxicated, they're not seeing things very clearly. So people work hard, they get money, they accumulate things. They just get consumed by it. Consumed. It's all in all. I remember reading a survey years ago where they interviewed all the rich people of the world. Some people interviewed all these big rich people, billionaires, and so on and so on. And they asked them all these questions. What's the number one thing you want? And they all kind of said, most of them said, I want to make more money. The billionaires, there's not enough. Oh, I've only got 5. I want to have 10 billion. Right? So they become intoxicated consumed by it. It becomes their all in all right to the end of their life. And so they're thinking, and so their consciousness is really contaminated. And so here is the person is renounced, and then going to this type of person, that kind of mentality is going to come over. Why should you do it just to get some things when all these things are available everywhere anyway, if you know how to look for them? And not only that, even if you don't know how to look for them, Sukadeva Goswami goes on to say that does the Almighty Lord not protect the fully surrendered soul? Krishna will look after you. In one purport in the Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada actually mentions this is the people don't know this secret in devotional service that someone who is a devotee and an advanced devotee knows that it just depends on Krishna. Whatever Krishna gives me, then Krishna will look after me. Krishna will look after me. Of course, that doesn't mean one just becomes lazy and doesn't do anything. One has to contribute, is another point made here. One has to contribute to society. Those in the renounced order, holy people, whether they're mendicants in the Christianity, whether they're fakirs in the Islam, or they're holy, they have to contribute to society, they have to give knowledge. And indeed, when Prabhupada first went to America, he said, I haven't come to your country to take anything, I have come to give. Here was Prabhupada in Vrindavan, sitting, writing. In Vrindavan, generally people go there to retire at the end of their life and give up their life and try to go back home, back to God. Now, Prabhupada left there to go to America. Why would he have left Vrindavan? Was he interested to, earn money over in America or something like that at the end of his life? No, he said, I came to give. So all those in the renounced order life have to give. The examples of the Goswamis, and Maharaj was talking yesterday, immense literatures, and Rupa Goswami, did he give any other examples here? No, they talked about the Goswami, Sukadev Goswami. Well, they contribute so much to society. And they give literature, or they distribute the literature, they talk to people, when they go to the homes, or when people give to them, and they give in alms to them. It's good for the people. It's good for them because they get that association and they get to hear what they have to say about spiritual things. And so it's just good all around. So this whole system, of course, it's talking about Sanatan Dham and Varna Ashrama. It's all in the system of Varna and Ashrama and Sanatan Dham, all this arrangement. Everyone's got their duties in life, householders, the brahmacharis, the Vanaprastha sannyasis, and the orders of life. So this is a nice system where people are trained, and it's all complete in itself. And then the goal is spirituality. So therefore one must be careful about when one becomes renounced, and one should not take it prematurely. Prabhupada mentions here, one has to have enough spiritual asset. If one doesn't have enough spiritual asset before taking renunciation, then again one will go to, and it's a Daivi Sampat in the 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Daivi Sampat. Spiritual assets. If your spiritual assets are sufficient, are strong, then you will not be again attracted to what's called asuri sampat, or material assets. But if your spiritual assets are weak, then the allurement of material assets will come up. And because you're spiritually weak, and another thing is mentioned here, that the renunciant has to live alone. Go and live alone. This is a big thing, to live alone, because we're very much like to interact and associate and so on. In the days of yore, they used to live alone. But one shouldn't be afraid of that, because the Supreme Personality of God is within the heart. And not only within our heart, but Krishna is everywhere. So even if one is alone, they're never alone. So I remember Prabhupada was asked that right in there. Did you feel that you were, when you went alone? Yes, I went alone, but I never felt alone, because Krishna and my Guru Maharaj was with me. So one who is developed spiritually will never feel alone. But if you're not developed spiritually, then that's another thing that can be a problem. Being, you're alone, you get lonely, and then you seek out association, and if you're spiritually weak, then the material, you will be attracted to material, and you'll seek out material association again. So what started off with good intentions, you can very easily go back the other way. So a very nice, very long purport, and we've gone a little bit over time. So has anyone got any question, or maybe a time for one or two questions? Any question or comment? Hare Krishna. Yes.
Accumulating spiritual assets. So how can you talk a bit about how the difference between pious assets and spiritual assets, because it may look externally the same. So what's the consciousness behind the spiritual accumulating spiritual assets?
Well, meritorious, pious assets, kriti, sukriti, that can be material, just like you do activities in the world that give good reactions, you get good results materially speaking. You're born in a nice family, there's enough food, there's enough money, there's enough, everything's nice children, and one can do activities that give this type of result. So this is piety on the material platform. Spiritual assets is another thing. Spiritual assets in practicing devotional service. I remember Satsarup Maharaj told me one time, he asked Prabhupada, now I've taken, just when he took sannyas, he told me this, when he took sannyas, he asked Prabhupada, now I'm a sannyasi, when I'm traveling around, should I have a deity or something like that? And actually, he told me that Prabhupada told me, no, actually for a sannyasi, it's just beads, chanting. Just chanting. So, these are the spiritual assets, just chanting, engaging in devotional service, so on and so forth. So these are spiritual assets that give spiritual results beyond the world. The other things give results in the world, but they're mode of goodness or whatever, but nevertheless they're of the world. So spiritual assets are beyond the world, and one practices, engages in spiritual practice, one builds up their spiritual assets. So when they become stronger and stronger and stronger, become so full of that, you're just not interested in other things. It's not that you have to force yourself. We're beginning devotees or on the path, and so we have to force ourselves. So you have to chant, and chanting japa, Hare Krishna, and fall asleep, So we have to, we've got a long ways to go. We have to become strong in that. But just naturally and spontaneously, you'll just do that and be so full that it's not a question of even trying to not think of the other thing. You just won't think of the other things. You'll just be thinking of Krishna. So this is a spiritual asset, and I think that's all we've got time for this morning. Hare Krishna, Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Go Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol.
HH Ramai Swami Maharaj Ki